للأحداث في حصص تحليلية مميزة. إذاعة الجزائر الدولية، صوتنا في العالم.
With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The Palestinian Al Jazeera journalist Wael Dahdouh has expressed his gratitude to the President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune and the Algerian people for their constant solidarity and sympathy with the Palestinian cause. And Foreign Affairs Minister Ahmed Attaf has received here in Algiers the UN Under-Secretary General for Safety and Security, Gilles Michaud. And scores of Palestinians, mainly women and children, were today killed in the continued Israeli airstrikes targeting various parts of the West Bank. And those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune has received the President of the European Union Commission here in Algiers. And the Al Jaish magazine has said that the achievements made over the recent years as part of the building of the new Algeria reflect the accuracy of the decisions taken by the President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune. Jamal Salmani has the details.
The magazine has recalled that the historic and global speech made to the people and to the members of parliament, in which the president highlighted the achievements made over the last 4 years in various fields through a carefully studied plan encompassing constitutional and political reforms aimed at entrenching the rule of law and preserving the state institutions by implementing deep economic reforms. The reforms are aimed at diversifying the economy and strengthening the social character of the state and improving the citizens' living conditions. According to Al Jaish magazine, what was accomplished in 4 years at different levels brings hope, given that Algeria is rapidly developing thanks to her youth who showed irrevocable will. Regarding Algeria's foreign policy, Al Jaish magazine has assured that Algeria will remain faithful to its constant principles inspired by her glorious revolution and humanitarian values. It has added that Algeria will make sure during her mandate as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council to defend Africa and the world's just causes, notably the Palestinian and Sahrawi causes. Al Jaish has recalled that the National People's Army made positive achievements at all levels, stressing that these achievements live up to the hopes and aspirations of the Algerian people who live in peace and security throughout all the national territory, despite the dangerous latest developments as well as the conspiracy maneuvers aimed at dealing a blow to the successful ongoing development of Algeria. Al Jaish magazine has concluded by saying that the successive and tangible successes secured notably in terms of the restoration of the people's trust in their constitutional institutions, the preservation of their dignity, as well as the preservation of the economic achievements are a source of pride and motivation that reflects the state's commitment to the process of building the new Algeria.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and the Palestinian Al Jazeera journalist Wael Dahdouh has expressed his gratitude to the President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune and the Algerian people for their constant solidarity and sympathy with the Palestinian cause. Wael Dahdouh also expressed gratitude of those who remained alive, of his family and of Palestinians in general.
لشعبنا الجزائري للرئيس عبد المجيد تبون.
I would like to thank the Algerian people and President Tebboune. I thank you for this kind gesture and your condolences and sympathy and solidarity. We have grown up and been raised with the idea that we, Palestinians and Algerians, are one people and not two peoples, and that we are one cause. We hope to see you soon in better conditions and that will be an Al-Quds once liberated, if God wills it. May God bless you and bless your efforts.
بارك الله فيكم وفي جهودكم.
Earlier, President Tebboune said the assassination of journalists will remain stained on the Israeli occupation and a witness of their policy of sealing the lips of freedom and hiding the reality of the Zionist crimes. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has received here in Algiers the UN Under-Secretary General for Safety and Security, Gilles Michaud. During the meeting, the two men examined ways to reinforce cooperation between Algeria and the United Nations in fields related to safety and security. The two parties also examined several regional and international questions, such as the situation in the Sahel region and the Middle East. The Secretary-General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Lounès Maghraman, has received here in Algiers the political director of the German Federal Ministry of Defense, Jasper Wieck. During the meeting, the two parties examined the excellent political relations between the two countries and expressed their will to strengthen bilateral cooperation in all sectors of activity. The meeting was also an opportunity to discuss regional and international issues of common concern, particularly the situation in the Sahel region. In this respect, the Secretary-General reported on the initiatives and efforts made by Algeria for the preservation of peace and stability in the region in the fight against terrorism and the different scourges, as well as the priorities it will defend during its mandate as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. And to the Middle East now, scores of Palestinians, mainly women and children, were today killed in the continued Israeli airstrikes targeting various parts of the West Bank. Gemma Selmani tells us more.
The news agency Wafa said violent bombardments hit the southern towns of Khan Yunis and Rafah, as well as the area of Zuweida in the central part of the territory. In this respect, the Médecins Sans Frontières organization said one of the shelters it runs in Khan Yunis was hit by the bombardments, during which several workers were killed. According to Palestinian sources, the Israeli attacks launched over 3 months ago against Gaza have claimed more than 23,000 lives, 75% of which are women and children. Meanwhile, 8 Palestinians were wounded during incidents that erupted after the Israeli forces assaulted a refugee camp east of Nablus in the West Bank. Earlier, 3 Palestinians were killed by the Israeli soldiers in Tulkarem, whereas several others were arrested during operations carried out in various areas of the territory. This came as the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, now on a tour of the region, has once again called for more feasible action to be taken by the Israeli authorities to prevent further civilian losses. Earlier, during a visit to Saudi Arabia, he stated that the leaders he met during his tour had agreed to work with the United States to contribute to the reconstruction and the stabilization of Gaza. The U.S. Secretary of State, who is meeting later the Palestinian officials in the West Bank, had stressed the necessity to work towards enforcing a lasting regional peace and to move towards the setting up of a Palestinian state.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. The Moroccan Front for Supporting Palestine and Against Normalization has denounced Morocco's repression during a peaceful sit-in held in solidarity with the Palestinian people, calling for Morocco to respect fundamental freedoms, notably those of peaceful assembly and demonstration. The association assured that the protest organized in the city of Oujda denounced the crimes of the Israeli occupation forces, demanded the end of the normalization with the Israeli settlers, and called for a boycott of the products of companies that support the Israeli entity. The Association of the Families of Sahrawi Detainees and Missing has held accountable the international humanitarian organizations for the genocide perpetrated by the Moroccan occupier against the Sahrawi people, calling on Spain to take its legal, political and moral responsibilities towards its former colony. The head of the Sahrawi Mine Action Coordination Office assured during an event organized that the Moroccan occupier's bombardment of Sahrawi civilians using drones was a continuation of the crimes and genocide that Morocco has been committing since the start of its invasion of the Western Sahara territories on October 31st, 1975. And the representative of the Polisario Front in Switzerland to the United Nations and international organizations in Geneva, Ubi Boshraya Bashir, has said that Morocco could not chair the UN Human Rights Council on behalf of Africa, notably that its status as military occupier of Western Sahara and its refusal to ratify the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. More details with Mariam Barshi.
In a press statement, Ubi Boshraya explained that Morocco would not have dared to present itself for a position of such importance, both symbolically and procedurally, without its chronic feeling of impunity, despite its terrible human rights record, whether in Morocco itself or in Western Sahara, a territory it has occupied militarily since 1975, where it imposes a state of absolute repression and systematic violation of human rights. He has stressed that if Morocco is elected to the presidency of the Human Rights Council, it will be further proof of the profound structural dysfunction of international institutions and an insult to Africa, adding that Morocco is the country least able to reflect African values in the current cycle of the presidency of the United Nations Human Rights Council. Ubi Boshraya has recalled that in addition to being strongly condemned and denounced by all international human rights organizations, Morocco is the only African country that's still refusing to ratify the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, stressing that since 2015, the UN's technical missions have been prevented from visiting Western Sahara by the Moroccan occupier, who also refuses to accept any mandate from the United Nations missions for the referendum in Western Sahara, MINURSO, which includes among its prerogative the monitoring of the respect of human rights. He also listed the numerous corruption scandals in which Morocco is involved, notably in Belgium, in the context of the Moroccan Gate scandal and espionage in the world by using the Israeli Pegasus software.
14 hours 42 minutes Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. And in France, the National Education Minister Gabriel Attal has been appointed Prime Minister. His appointment came in the wake of a government reshuffle carried out by President Macron. Gabriel Attal, aged 34, becomes the youngest Prime Minister in France's contemporary history. And now the Kremlin has said that the Russian military will do everything to minimize and eliminate the threat of shelling Russian cities by Ukraine's armed forces, following repeated shelling of the border city of Belgorod. Mariam Barshegan.
Speaking to reporters, the Kremlin press secretary Dmitry Peskov accused Ukraine of deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure, which it denies. The border city of Belgorod has come under frequent attacks since the start of the war, but they have intensified in recent weeks, with one strike reportedly claiming the lives of 24 people. Belgorod regional governor said 300 people had been evacuated from Russia's Belgorod because of Ukrainian attacks. Yesterday, 4 Ukrainians were killed, and at least 45 injured as Russia continued its drones and missiles attacks on Ukraine. Ukraine's military said it was able to bring down all 8 drones and 18 of the 51 missiles that were launched from Russia. It says Russian forces made efforts to advance in several areas along the front line, including around Liman and the Kharkiv region, as well as the Donetsk and Zaporizhia regions.
14 hours 43 minutes Algiers time. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and now the headlines. The Palestinian Al Jazeera journalist Wael Dahdoh has expressed his gratitude to the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, and the Algerian people for their constant solidarity and sympathy with the Palestinian cause. And Foreign Affairs Minister Ahmed Attaf has received here in Algiers the UN Under-Secretary General for Safety and Security, Gilles Michaud. And scores of Palestinians, mainly women and children, were today killed in the continued Israeli airstrikes targeting various parts of the West Bank. And that's it for our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to our health magazine by Mohammed Khatel.
Hello and welcome welcome to this new edition of your weekly program, The Health Magazine. Today we will speak about multiple sclerosis, or MS. Multiple sclerosis is a potentially disabling disease of the brain and spinal cord, or the central nervous system. In MS, the immune system attacks the protective sheath or myelin that covers nerve fibers and causes communication problems between your brain and the rest of your body. Eventually, the disease can cause permanent damage or deterioration of the nerves. Signs and symptoms of MS vary widely and depend on the amount of nerve damage and which nerves are affected. Some people with severe MS may lose the ability to walk independently or at all, while others may experience long periods of remission without any new symptoms. There is no cure for multiple sclerosis. However, treatments can help speed recovery from attacks, modify the course of the disease, and manage symptoms. Multiple sclerosis signs and symptoms may differ greatly from person to person and over the course of the disease depending on the location of affected nerve fibers. Symptoms often affect movement, such as numbness or weakness in one or more limbs that typically occurs on one side of your body at a time, or your legs and trunk. Electric shock sensations that occur with certain neck movements, especially bending the neck forward. Tremor, lack of coordination, or unsteady gait. Vision problems are also common, including partial or complete loss of vision, usually in one eye at a time, often with pain during eye movement, prolonged double vision, and blurry vision. Multiple sclerosis symptoms may also include slurred speech, fatigue, dizziness, tingling or pain in parts of your body, problems with sexual, bowel, and bladder function. You should go and see a doctor if you experience any of the above symptoms for unknown reasons. Most people with MS have a relapsing remitting disease course. They experience periods of new symptoms or relapses that develop over days or weeks and usually improve partially or completely. These relapses are followed by quiet periods of disease remission that can last months or even years. Small increases in body temperature can temporarily worsen signs and symptoms of MS, but these aren't considered true disease relapses. At least 50% of those with relapsing remitting MS eventually develop a steady progression of symptoms with or without periods of remission within 10 to 20 years from disease onset. This is known as secondary progressive MS. The worsening of symptoms usually includes problems with mobility and gait. The rate of disease progression varies greatly among people with secondary progressive MS. Some people with MS experience a gradual onset and steady progression of signs and symptoms without any relapses, known as primary progressive MS. The cause of multiple sclerosis is unknown. It's considered an autoimmune disease in which the body's immune system attacks its own tissues. In the case of MS, this immune system malfunction destroys the fatty substance that coats and protects nerve fibers in the brain and spinal cord. Myelin can be compared to the insulation coating on electrical wires. When the protective myelin is damaged and the nerve fiber is exposed, the messages that travel along that nerve fiber may be slowed or blocked. It isn't clear why MS develops in some people and not others. A combination of genetics and environmental factors appears to be responsible. However, the following factors may increase your risk of developing multiple sclerosis. First, age. MS can occur at any age, but onset usually occurs around 20 and 40 years of age. However, younger and older people can be affected. Sex. Women are more than 2 to 3 times as likely as men to have relapsing remitting MS. Family factors. If one of your parents or siblings has had MS, you are at high risk of developing the disease. Certain infections. A variety of viruses have been linked to MS, including Epstein-Barr, the virus that causes infectious mononucleosis. Race. White people, particularly those of Northern European descent, are at highest risk of developing MS. People of Asian, African, or Native American descent have the lowest risk. Climate. MS is far more common in countries with temperate climates, including Canada, the northern United States, New Zealand, southeastern Australia, and Europe. Vitamin D. Having low levels of vitamin D and low exposure to sunlight is associated with a greater risk of MS. Certain autoimmune diseases. You have a slightly high risk of developing MS if you have other autoimmune disorders such as thyroid disease, pernicious anemia, psoriasis, type 1 diabetes, or inflammatory bowel disease. And smoking. Smokers who experience an initial event of symptoms that may signal MS are more likely than non-smokers to develop a second event that confirms relapsing remitting MS. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of your weekly program, The Health Magazine. Do join us next week for a fresh edition of our program. Until then, stay tuned to Radio Algeria International, and bye-bye for now.
And that was our health magazine, compiled and presented by Mohamed Khater. Now, let's visit together one of the breathtaking regions in the Algerian desert, Timimoun. I'll leave you now to be with you again tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Algiers time. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to Discover Algeria, a program in which we'll let you discover or know more about the Algerian heritage, to include history, traditions, popular beliefs, social rituals, celebrations, as well as many aspects of the Algerians' life dating back to the Berber or Amazigh era until the Muslims won. Decided to take you to the Algerian desert, 1,200 kilometers from the capital Algiers to the small town of Timimoun, located in the heart of the Gourara region and part of the western Great Erek. Timimoun is located in the arid zone of the Sahara in the southwestern province of Adrar, with an annual rainfall that doesn't exceed 100 millimeters per year. The region is marked by incredibly high sand dunes that shift restlessly day after day across the hot, sandy plains of the desert. Timimoun is situated between palm groves and a salt lake in a little desert oasis. The magnificent sand dunes of the Sahara rise and fall in the distance, providing the city with the most picturesque backdrop. The town can be divided into two sections. The old part is called Al-Qasr, which is the Arabic word for castles, and most of the houses are built of red mud in a style known as Sudanese architecture. These homes seem to compete for space, almost climbing on top of one another as they try to gain the highest ground possible. The streets between them are narrow and, in true desert fashion, are shaded over by large sheets of cloth so that passing pedestrians can have some sort of relief from the blazing sun. The properties here are enclosed by mud walls that are too high to see over, and the shade of the palm trees provides welcome relief. In the modern sections of the town, which were built by the French, much of the original architectural styles were drawn on to create a harmonious feel. For instance, the Oasis Rouge, or Red Oasis Hostel, that was once built in this newer section by the French, is now a cultural centre. There is also the Gourara Hotel, built after Algeria's independence by Fernand Pouillon in the 70s, and which is a tribute to the Qasr architecture as well as to the materials used, with that kind of ochre-like color so particular to Timimoun's constructions. Now, one of the most notable features in this city are also the qubbat, which are buildings with dome shapes dedicated to the marabout or saints in the region. There's also the oasis, which is full of a great number of palm trees that protect crops planted with fruit trees, vegetables, and irrigated thanks to a fantastic irrigation system called Fougera that date back to the first inhabitants of the region 10 centuries ago. The Fougera managed to mobilize groundwater for the irrigation of hectares of crops. Today, unfortunately, we witness the gradual disappearance of Fougeras. We lose about 1 to 2 Fougeras per year for over half a century. The causes of decline in Fougeras are technical, social and environmental, such as heritage, depopulation, as well as silting and flooding of the galleries by wild plants. There are also technical problems such as the collapse of tunnels, which also cause the degradation of the Fougeras. Let's mention too that the modern collection of water with pumps and drilling is also gradually replacing the traditional hydraulic system. Most visitors to Timimoun use the city as a base for excursions into the inhabitable Great Western Erg. If you are visiting this characteristic town, make sure you meet and take time to get to know the inhabitants who have Haratin, Zinnet, Berber, Shimba Arab and Black African backgrounds to discover their hospitality, life philosophy, generosity and kindness. Timimoun is just a place that simply shouldn't be missed.